biggest perspective changes from how we have thought about, leadership movements, leadership development, the preparation of our leaders in the past, has come about by this one phrase. And that in the past, I believe that organizations have taken what I call a product-based approach to leadership development. So, there are times, like if you look at this article that Forbes released, that there's this alarming decline, in the quality, the number of high quality leaders, and they haven't seen those levels since the great financial crisis of 2008. So there certainly have been times when we have felt these crises before. And so we've done some things, but I think in the past, the way that organizations have responded, the way that the leadership development and org development communities have responded is in what I would call a product-based approach to, to improvement, to their leadership movements. They will buy a product, they'll buy a program, they'll build a program, they'll buy a set of data points around engagement, and then they'll measure that and roll it out inside their organization. And I think that in terms of a future perspective, that is moving from that product-based approach to leadership development to what I would call a capacity building approach to leadership development, where we're always understanding how much leadership capacity do we have. And, right, it's that measurement thing that you were talking about, Charlie, right? We always understand how much we have, and we understand where we're strong and where we're weak in relationship to it, because it's connected to business outcomes, which allows us to do the things that we need to do in order to increase our capacity in the right places. For me, as I think about past perspectives, that to me has been the biggest shift that has taken place. It's not gonna take place, it's taking place right now. That's my perspective.
Yeah, and I agree, Reg. So the way that I come at it is that, yep, past perspectives, are changing or have changed, and it's actually gaining momentum. And it's interesting you bring up that article that Forbes released, right? Like it's declining rates, declining, alarmingly,
Yeah.
alarming rates of decline. And the thing is, if you put it in the perspective of 160 billion being spent against that very topic, right, in the United States alone, it actually, I think, says to us that there's actually a more systemic thing that's going on over there. Is that it's not the lack of resources, it's not the lack of attention. I think it's how and what's being done. I think that's shifting, and that's what's important in what you just said to me, because the fact of the matter remains is that as long as leadership development is approached as a product, like you were saying, right, where it's topical, where it's isolated. So we're saying engagement, and then we're off to the races trying to create better engagement, interventions. And I think the place where, for me, the change for me is that it cannot be topical anymore. It has to be holistic, because guess what?
Yeah.
Engagement is just but one muscle inside the leadership,
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem, right? And yes, it has the most predictive and it has the most visible impact on a business outcome. But there are
Mm-hmm.
so many other muscles that need to be paid attention to. So the point is that if we're doing the hard work of teaching our leaders to be drive better engagement, and we
Mm-hmm.
can measure it, the bigger question I think we're asking here, and as part of Rejuvi, like you said, Charlie, with the data that we now have, the question we're asking is why not make it more holistic than just engagement? Why
Mm-hmm.
not look at it as the entire piece that is, the entire, body that is leadership, and then be able to say, okay, if we need to go on engagement, then that's what we're going to do. But we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be doing it in the context of developing the whole leader, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the other piece that I feel, from a perspective change, is happening as well. And I know we're probably the tip of the spear driving that, but it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely happening. You see a lot more attention to that being paid within the HRD/OD space, at least
Mm-hmm.
from my perspective.
Yeah.
And data, and Charlie, to your point, the data being available just makes it easier and easier as we want to go
Mm-hmm.
down that path.
Yeah, and I think it has to be a more holistic approach, right? Because the work environments are getting just more and more complex, not less. And the opportunity
Hmm.
to really help leaders think about you know, there's so much talk about digital transformation, but you know, it's even beyond that. I mean, there are new things coming into the workplace all the time where, you know, knowledge workers and the ability to manage knowledge workers is newer for people. I mean, that's a 21st century phenomena. You know, it's you know, you read all this stuff about, you know, AI has been around for a while, but now, you know, it's manifesting itself in even more business use cases, and and the ability to quickly kind of reposition and morph and be able to quickly pivot leaders and what they need to know is just going to be critical. So not only are we going to have more holistic models, but we're going to have to be able to tweak and pivot those models very rapidly as, you know, we're adjusting to a future of work that, you know, is seeing transformational change. So I think that holistic approach is so critical.
If you're going to make that shift to a capacity-based approach, you're going to need a platform, right? And that platform is going to have to break 3 barriers for you. Number one, it is going to have to give you a modern model of productivity to define and differentiate leadership at all levels of your business. Number two, it is absolutely going to have to give you real-time data down to the attribute level, so that people understand exactly where they're doing well and exactly how they can get better. And number three, it's going to have to, and this is the part that we didn't go and take a look at in the platform, it's going to have to give you content intelligence to actually drive it, right? Because you're going to need those 3 things. A modern model of productivity to define and differentiate it. You're going to need real-time data to support it, and you're going to need content intelligence to drive it. And that, in a nutshell, is a service that can actually help you to build your capacity over time. That is ultra core, front and center to your leadership movement. Right? That's what it's all about. And it gets us back to all these great things that we talked about at the opening. A leadership movement is personal. You know, a leadership movement is by design. And a leadership movement has to have action and progress. Otherwise, it's just a discussion.